Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I hope everyone had a wonderful week, enjoying the heat and all that comes with that. It's weeks like this that I'm glad I worked in climate-controlled air conditioning and heat all year round. So it's very nice. But before we get too far, I want to put out a little warning or disclaimer. I don't know what you want to call it, but the message today is only for about half of you, in a sense. But my message is mainly focused today on the men in the congregation. I've been thinking about this a lot. Not that the ladies can't get something out of this too, but when I was thinking about this, and I actually came up with this topic a long time ago, this is what the Lord impressed me to preach. And I think, this is, if there's an audience, and if it's only for me, that's okay, because this sermon is for me. And I hope you can gain a blessing too. But I've been thinking a lot about this topic lately. And the reason for that is he seems to have disappeared. I'm sure he's here somewhere. But a couple months ago, my wife and I welcomed a little baby boy into the family. So what have I been thinking about, you may be asking? I've been thinking about what kind of a man do I need to be for my son? I look at him there sleeping or eating or whatever he's doing. He's happy. He doesn't have any cares in the world. He has very few needs. He cries every once in a while, but he does pretty good for the most part. But he enjoys life. He has very simple pleasures. It's a big, scary world out there, and he knows nothing about it yet. So how am I going to teach him everything that he needs to know? It's a very daunting task, and that's why I've been thinking a lot about it, because we run into this far too lightly sometimes. And another reason I've been thinking about this is there's so much out there for women and moms. We've got Facebook pages, YouTube channels, support groups, books, etc., focusing on moms. How much have you seen for dads? But we're men, we don't need it, right? We don't need any help. We're going to pick ourselves up by our bootstraps. We're going to figure it out all on our own, and we're going to be just fine. We don't need any help from anyone or anything, because we're men, right? Okay. So, thank you. So what is the biblical view on what a man and a father should be? How should he fit into the family circle? What role do they play, or are they even very important at all? So what I've observed, especially in our country, but around the world, is we have a manlessness crisis. And what I mean by that, we have a chronic lack of masculinity. Biblical, true masculinity. I want to give you a few stats. 25% of children under 18 in this country grow up in a single-parent household, with 80 to 85 of these being single mothers. 3 times the global average. 40 and even as high as 60% of children are born to unwed parents. This is up from 5% in 1960. There's a book written called The Fatherless Generation. So these are some stats of homes without fathers. They account for 63% of youth suicides, which is 5 times the national average. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes, 32 times the national average. 85% of children who show behavior disorders are from fatherless homes, 20 times the national average. 71% of all high school dropouts, 9 times the national average. 85% of all individuals in juvenile prisons are from fatherless homes, 20 times the national average. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes, 10 times the national average. I don't know about you, but those numbers are sickening to me. Now, what happens when you do have a father in the home? Children with fathers are involved, or with involved fathers, I should say, are 40% less likely to repeat a grade in school, 70% less likely to drop out of school, more likely to get A's, more likely to enjoy school and engage in extracurricular activities. I see this maybe not every day, but I work with a number of youth, early teens, preteens, teenagers, high schoolers. Most of them do not enjoy school. Every time, I always ask them if they learned something today, and about 98% of the time, they say no. There's not a love for learning in school. And I see these children, their hearts are crying out for attention, because I can tell they're not getting it at home. Children with loving fathers are significantly more likely to do well in school, have healthy self-esteem, exhibit empathy and pro-social behavior, avoid high-risk behaviors such as drug use, truancy, and criminal activity compared to children who have uninvolved fathers. Studies on parent-child relationships and child well-being show that father love is an important factor in predicting the social, emotional, and cognitive development and functioning of children and young adults. We hear this term get thrown around here lately, toxic masculinity. And this is an example of when masculinity is toxically low, or they've been exposed to the wrong kind of masculinity. So we're going to try, in our little short time here, to go into some biblical principles on what us as men need to fulfill, what our children need, what the youth in our church need, what we need ourselves. So fathers have a very important role to play in the family because disastrous things happen when they are not involved. And I would add to those numbers how many fathers are present, but they're not there. They may be in the home, but they're not engaged with their children in a meaningful way. That might be a little bit harder to study, a little bit more qualitative, but I would argue that they might lead towards some of those numbers as well. But I firmly believe that God did not design the family to be a one-person show. As many things as amazing that moms can do, they can't do it all. And those stats I just listed for you back up that. So what does the Bible say about what we're supposed to be? What role did God intend for men to play in the family and in society? And I ask myself, what tools am I going to need for my son as he enters this world? This scary, dangerous world that's got so many things that want his attention and time. We have lost the idea of true masculinity. But thankfully, there is an answer. So I want you to turn with me to Micah 6, verse 8, because God has given us the blueprint and the examples, both some a lot of good, some bad. We're going to get into that. And before we go too much farther, God knew I needed this sermon, because when I came up with the idea for this topic, everything that we're going to talk about in my personal life had not happened yet. So I am currently trying to live my sermon, and so that's why it's for me. So Micah 6, verse 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Amen. God tells us right there. He's going to tell us what to do. We just got to go look for it, and that's what we're going to do today. This is a very reassuring fact. When God makes a promise, He's going to fulfill that promise. He doesn't leave us just dangling out there to wander in the dark. It's like, well, I think it maybe should be this way. No, not on something this important. So I want to look at some real men today. Now, I don't know what you conjure up when you think of the idea of a real man, but not the Hollywood example with the chiseled abs and perfect hair. Not that either of those things are wrong, but if that's as deep as our view of masculinity goes, it's sorely lacking. Amen. So maybe we can get some clues from some examples we have in the Bible. So specifically, and as I've kind of gotten older, when I was a little kid, Daniel was one of my favorite Bible characters. But as I gotten a little older, Caleb is becoming one of my favorite guys. He was quite a dude. But we're going to look at Caleb, Moses, and Joshua today. And our biblical range isn't going to be very far, but there's a lot of lessons packed in just a few chapters. So we're going to look at what these men went through and how they managed to hold their connection with God and how they responded. And that's probably where we're going to learn the most, is how they responded. And we're going to look at how we may respond, how I have responded that maybe has not been the best. So in Numbers 13, we pick up Moses, Caleb, and Joshua at the edge of the promised land. Now, I want you to visualize. I'm not very good at this, but do the best you can. Other people are better than me. You've just come out of Egypt about a year or so earlier. You've been at Mount Sinai. You set up the tabernacle. You're at the edge of Canaan. What's your next move? What's that, Steve? Promised land. It's right there. It's just across the river. You've been waiting 400 years for this. Well, not them personally, but as a nation, they've been waiting 400 years for this. They're right there. And so what does the Lord tell Moses to do? No, we're not. We're not there yet. It's the first time. We're gonna get to that, we're gonna get to that time period here in a minute. But he says, send out some spies. Go look at the land. They're out there for 40 days. So Caleb and Joshua, they're ready. They're like, okay, give it to us. We're gonna go look at this land. You know, we've seen the plagues. We've seen the Red Sea. We've seen the manna. We've seen the water from the rock. We've got this. God's going to give it to us. So they come back. So we're going to turn to our first principle. We're going to go over 5 principles of what I found in this example. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but I think these are very important for what a godly man should be. But our first principle is faith. Our first principle is what, everybody? Faith. Okay, remember that. There's going to be a quiz at the end. We're going to go to Numbers 13, 28 to 33, where the spies give us a little report, or an analysis, you might say, of what they had just been through the last 40 days. We're going to pick it up, Numbers 13, verses 28 through 33. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we, and they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, 'The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature.' There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak, came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight." So, what's the report?
Bad idea.
Bad idea, that's right. And what was the vote?
12-2.
No, 10-2. 12 total. 10-2, bad, 2 good. Now, in a democracy, it's settled. We're not going to do it. But Israel was not a democracy. But we have Caleb and Joshua's report. If we go down a little bit further, Numbers 14, 8 and 9. "If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." So we got the 2. We got the 10 naysayers and the two positive people. They said, God is going to give us this land. Haven't you seen what he's already done over the past year in the desert? He sent food from the sky, water from a rock. He buried the Egyptians in the Red Sea. These giants are nothing. Except what do we see? They wanted to stone Joshua and Caleb. Some response. You see, Joshua and Caleb were not looking at the giants through their perspective. They put God's glasses on.
Amen.
How many times do we, like the 10 spies, look in our own human strength and think things are impossible? They probably didn't know exactly how God was going to give them a land. I imagine if you told them that they might have to walk around a city for 7 days and then the walls would fall down, they would be like, well, I don't know, maybe. Whatever God says, that's what we're going to do. Seems like an odd battle plan, but that's what God told them to do. That didn't matter. They had seen how God had led them in the past, and they had seen his promises, and they knew he wasn't going to let them down. So our first principle is what? Faith. All right. Moving on to the second principle, number 2, of a godly man, is they don't complain. Now, as we'll get to in a second, this is something I have been kind of struggling with. But we're going to look up a couple texts. We're going to go back a little bit. Numbers 14, 1-4. So all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, "If only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us select a leader and return to Egypt. First instance of resistance, well, this isn't the first, but their go-to plan is to go back to Egypt. It makes me think that Egypt must have not been that bad, because they want to go back there a lot. So they want to get them a little group together and march their way back across the desert. Likely they wouldn't have made it because they wouldn't have had God's protection. It's more than just a couple days, I think. But that's what they wanted to do. And now we have the judgment because of their complaining in verses 22 and 23. Because all these men who have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have put me to the test now, these 10 times, and have not heeded my voice, they certainly shall not see the land of which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who rejected me see it. Now comes the punishment. You know, sometimes we don't like the punishment. I know this was very true for me growing up. I hated being punished. And many times I was much more sorry about the punishment than whatever it was that I happened to do. Just like the children of Israel. So we're hard on them sometimes, but we're really not too different in many ways. Just the circumstances are different. Now, Patriarchs and Prophets, page 392. The decree that Israel was not to enter Canaan for 40 years was a bitter disappointment to Moses, Aaron, Caleb, and Joshua. Yet without a murmur they accepted a divine decision, but those who had been complaining of God's dealing with them and declaring that they would return to Egypt wept and mourned greatly when the blessing which they had despised were taken from them. Now listen to this next sentence. This was a hard hitter. They had complained at nothing, and now God had given them cause to weep. Ouch. Had they mourned for their sin when it was faithfully laid before them, this sentence would not have been pronounced. But they mourned for the judgment. Their sorrow was not repentance and cannot secure a reversing of a sentence. Now, I don't want to focus on the Israelites. I want to focus on the 4 men in the first of the paragraph, Moses, Aaron, Caleb, and Joshua. Yet without a murmur they accepted the divine decision. It wasn't their fault. They may have been the only 4 that wanted to go forward. Or whether 1 million, 2, 3 million, whatever it was at this point, they all wanted to go backwards. But they were the only ones not complaining. Why is that? They understood what God was doing and why they had to go back. But still they didn't complain. All the people that were ready to take the land accepted it without complaining, accepted the punishment. And now all the people that complained about taking over the land were now complaining about their punishment as well. Not about their sin, though. Just the bad stuff. Just the hard things. These guys hadn't done anything wrong, yet not a word out of their mouth. So what is the second principle of a godly man? Don't murmur. Don't complain. So sometimes we like to complain about things that don't even matter that much. Not nearly as much as trying to take over some giants. Would we have complained? Probably. But then again, if we had the faith, the thought we could conquer those giants, then maybe we would have the wherewithal to not complain either. So where do you stand on that? Sometimes that's a scary question to ask. But I want to give you some examples from my personal life. A couple months before my son was born, this would have been probably early May, my wife was having some Braxton Hicks contractions, and that is normal during the pregnancy, but hers were not normal. Hers were coming and they were not going away. And so our midwife told us, shut it down, you're on the couch, no questions. So that threw a little wrench. Number one, I've got to pick up a lot more stuff because my wife is on the couch now. And she's supposed to be there, and it's for the health of the baby, so that's okay. But that didn't keep self from creeping in. I would go to work all day, and I would work hard. Then I would come home, and the house would still be a mess. And I would look at this, and it's like, can't I just get a break? I just want to sit down and relax. I don't want to clean the kitchen. I don't want to do the laundry. I don't want to go mow the yard and take care of the dog. And I have to admit, I would get very discouraged. You know, I was trying to pull myself up by my bootstraps. I can do this. This is what you're supposed to do. But I would many times fizzle out and get overwhelmed with my situation. I can't take care of 2.5 people all by myself. This is not going to work. See, I was being selfish. I was putting myself in front of my wife and my baby. There are times I wanted to quit and just be done with it all. Why do I have to do this? The kitchen is just going to stay dirty. I don't care anymore. Intellectually, I knew this wasn't the right spirit that I was taking, that I was struggling with, but that's what I felt like doing. It's really easy to do what we feel like doing. And I have to tell you, other days it's a lot easier to clean the kitchen than on certain other days. So I'm praying that it's more consistently that it's a good thing, but that is still a struggle. But if we want to be true men of God, there is no place for this kind of attitude. This attitude represents an unsurrendered and selfish heart. But thankfully, with some prayer and encouragement from my wife, I would regain myself and get some new energy to keep on striving forward. And I have to hand it to my wife, because this was not easier. This was not easier for her either. She likes to have a clean house and everything picked up, and I think she hates to look at it more than I do. But she's stuck on the couch. And the conflict is going in her mind, well, I can just do a little bit, and then she would try to get up in a little bit, and the contractions would get worse, and she would have to go back down. So that was a bad idea. But she was so encouraging, even though she was going through her own discouragement due to her predicament. See, God was trying to teach me to be grateful for what I had. And another thing with this, that she had to be on bed rest, was that she was not teaching any more of her students. And that was not in my plan, which we'll get to a little later. But that meant less money coming in as well. So now I got to take care of the house, and we're not making as much money as we were before. Not the plan. The plan was to work up until we had the baby. Just stressing me out. So we'll come back to that in a minute. It gets better. So the third principle is unselfishness, or being unselfish. So what's the third principle? Unselfish. So we find also in chapter 14 there, God has an interesting proposal to Moses. It's a proposal that we don't often talk about a lot, but I think it's very important about what kind of character Moses had. So starting in verse 11 there, 11 and 12. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will these people reject me, and how long will they not believe me with all the signs which I have performed among them? I will strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. Not a bad idea, huh? Get rid of all these complaining, whining, murmuring people. I'm going to be the new head. It's going to be me. Not Abraham anymore. It's going to be me. Me, Moses. Very tempting. How many of us would take God up on that offer? Very tempting. Very tempting. But Moses, thankfully, he was far wiser than us. And he knew that wasn't a good plan. And he explains why in verses 13 to 16 there. And Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear it, for by your might you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, among these people, that you, Lord, are seen face to face. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. Let's start over in verse 11. Then the Lord said to Moses, I'm all confused. Verse 13, and Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear it, for by your might you brought these people up from among them. And they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, are among these people, and that you, Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands above them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and a pillar of fire by night. Now if you kill these people as one man, then the nations which have heard of your fame will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people to the land which he swore to give them, therefore he killed them in the wilderness. So it would have shown the other nations that God was not powerful enough to do what he said he was. And the witness of the Israelite nation to the other nations would have been effectively ruined, because God's name would have been tarnished. Now, if everybody else could have seen what Moses had been through, they would have probably been, yeah, do it. They deserve it. But that's not what they saw. They would just see the outward effects. And Moses knew this. So he pleaded for the Israelites on his behalf. Moses, he's a much better man than us. So what is the third principle? Unselfishness. All right, now moving on to the fourth principle, responsibility, or accepting responsibility, taking ownership. We're going to jump ahead 40 years now. A little bit closer to Moses' deaths here, Jerry. But not quite there yet. Numbers 20, 22 through 26. Talking about the death of Aaron here. Now the children of Israel, the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor, and the Lord spake to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to the mount to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son, for Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. Kind of depressing. God kind of foreshadows your death. But Sister White has some very interesting statements on this. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 425. Somewhere beyond the mountains of Edom was the path leading to the promised land, that land whose blessings Moses and Aaron were not to enjoy. No rebellious feelings found a place in their hearts. No expression of murmuring escaped their lips, yet a solemn sadness rested upon their countenances as they remembered what had debarred them from the inheritance of their fathers. You see, both of them knew exactly why they weren't going to be let in the promised land. Aaron for building the golden calf. Now, well, sometimes, we wonder, well, yeah, that was pretty bad. That was 40 years ago. We don't have any record that, we actually have a lot of information to the contrary, that he repented and fulfilled his duties as the high priest faithfully for the remainder of the time. You think God could maybe forgive him and let him in? And then Moses, more recently, striking the rock. Especially this one. This is after 40 years of whining and complaining. He gets upset one time and God says, nope, you're not going in. But to God, these were no small offenses. Because with Moses, the rock where the water was coming out of represented Christ. Christ was only to be struck down one time, not twice. And the whole reason could have been avoided because they complained about going through Edom, and they were not supposed to get that rock a second time, but he graciously gave it to them again. So that all could have been avoided, but the children of Israel, they complained. So, but even Moses, he could have been, these people you gave me, I just lost it that one time. Please let me in. I want to see it so bad. But God said no. And Moses and Aaron, they both accepted their fates. They could have played the blame game. Well, I wouldn't have done it if it was for this or that, or like Adam, this woman you gave me. There's no room for the blame game. There's an utter lack of ownership and accepting responsibility for your actions. We all want to put it off on somebody else. If they weren't like that, I wouldn't have done that. It's their fault. I tell my youth class sometimes, if you're saying that, you're allowing someone to control your actions. And that's kind of a scary place to be. We don't want someone else to be controlling our actions. We want God to be controlling our actions. So the fourth principle, accepting responsibility for your actions. No room for the blame game. All right, our fifth and final point here is when God gives us a challenge, we say, bring it on. Now, we'll put a caveat in here. These are God's challenges, not our man-made, made-up challenges. Because how many times do we go on our own endeavors and we wear out? God does not promise He's going to give us the strength for that. But anything that He gives us, we know that He will not give us anything more than we can bear. Amen. So we're going to flip over to Joshua 14, verses 10 through 15 here. And Joshua has a very strange request. Not a normal request, and if you or I were him, we may not have made this one. Joshua 14, 10 through 15. And now behold, the Lord has kept me alive, as he has said, these 45 years, ever since the Lord spake this word to Moses, while Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now here I am this day, 85 years old. As yet I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me, just as my strength was then. So now is my strength for war, both for going out and for coming in. Now therefore give me this mountain, of which the Lord spake in that day, for you heard in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fortified. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. And Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, as an inheritance. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, to this day, because he wholly followed the Lord God of Israel. And the name of Hebron formerly was Kirjah Arba. Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. Then the land had rest from war. So here he is, 85 years old, just as eager to go up against those Canaanites as he had been when he was a spy. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 512, in reference to Caleb, he did not ask for himself a land already conquered, but the place which above all others the spies had thought it impossible to subdue. By the help of God, he would wrest his stronghold from the very giants whose power had staggered the faith of Israel. It was no desire for honor or aggrandizement that prompted Caleb's request. The brave old warrior was desirous of giving the people an example that would honor God and encourage the tribes fully to subdue the land, which their fathers had deemed unconquerable. So he's ready to go, because he knew the land was already his. He just had to go get it.
Amen.
Like I said, sometimes we wear ourselves out on our own challenges that we give ourselves. Maybe it's, building up our career, or maybe we're adorning our earthly castles to impress our neighbors more than just beyond looking nice. That will wear us out in the end. But God will give us the strength for the things that really matter. Well, let's contrast this real quick to Ephraim and Manasseh's request, the sons of Joseph. They had a very different request. Maybe one more like you and I would come up with. So we're going to go to Joshua 17, 14 through 18. Then the children of Joseph spoke to Joshua, saying, "Why have you given us only one lot and one share to inherit, since we are a great people, inasmuch as the Lord has blessed us until now?" So Joshua answered them, "If you are a great people, go up to the forest country and clear a place for yourself, there in the land of the Perizzites and the giants, since the mountains of Ephraim are too confined for you." But the children of Joseph said, "The mountain country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who dwell in the land of the valley have chariots of iron. But those who are of Beth Shean and its towns, and those who are of the valley of Jezreel." And Joshua spoke to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, saying, "You are a great people and have great power, and you shall not have only one lot. But the mountain country shall be yours. Although it is wooded, you shall cut it down, and its farthest extent shall be yours. For you shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots and are strong." So what did Ephraim and Manasseh want?
More.
They wanted more, but specifically they wanted unconquered land. They didn't even want to go chop down some trees in the mountains. That was even too hard for them, let alone the giants. They wanted some land already subdued, and they could just waltz in, set up camp, and be done. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 515. The power of God of Israel had been pledged to his people, and had the Ephraimites possessed the courage and faith of Caleb, no enemy could have stood before them. Now going back to Caleb, he could have asked for anything he wanted and probably rightly deserved it. But he asked for the toughest part. He took care of the 3 sons of Anak, considered to be the most formidable of all the Canaanites. Now, how often do we say, like Ephraim and Manasseh, it's too hard for me? Like I was talking about earlier, you get home from work and your wife needs something done. Do you jump right on it? Or do you complain and say, I need to chill out, I need to eat, or I need to relax. I don't have time to spend with the kids. I need some me time first. And sometimes we take a little too much me time and not enough other time. I've got too many pressing things to do. My list of things is more important than your list of things, and I'm going to do my list before your list. So, like I said, God has been testing me recently. You heard the first part of the story earlier. So, June 21. Well, to my earliest knowledge, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when I got up. Contractions started about midnight for her, but I got to get my sleep in, So I wake up about 3, and she's like, I think it's time. And my first thought is, are you sure? Is this really it? It's like, this is Monday morning. It's like, I got to go to work today. It's like, I've heard of people going and they get sent back. It's like, are you sure this is really it? And as we go along, it turns out, yes, this was it. And this is probably not where my head should have been, but that's where it was. So we get there, everything's going pretty good. We had decided to use a midwife who has a clinic up in Springfield, so we're driving up there. It's pouring down rain. Now, you're usually in a hurry, and Springfield is a little farther than you might like, and I'm not really able to go the speed limit most of the time. So this is frustrating for me. I got a pregnant wife having contractions over here. I'm trying to drive balance quickly and also being safe, because I definitely don't want to end up in the ditch. But thankfully, we make it there about 7:30 in the morning. Midwife checks her out. Everything's ready to go. Everything's going fantastic, which makes me wonder, like, we probably should have gotten ready a little quicker, because things were a little bit further along than we would have wanted to, especially for driving that far. But we get there, everything's going great, and everything kind of stops. So you get to checking it out. Midwife says, so we're there for about 2-3 hours. Midwife says he's in the wrong position. We're going to the hospital. My whole plan had just fallen apart in about 5 seconds. See, I am a man. I like to have a plan. I like to know when it's going to happen. I like to know what we're going to do. We're going to know how much it costs. And when things deviate from the plan, I get very stressed. I get very stressed when that happens. You see, everything was paid for. It was all taken care of. Everything was going great. This is just like I anticipated. My plan was working fantastically until it wasn't. See, I was actually really excited. This is going early in the morning. We're going to have this baby. We're going to be home by tonight. We're going to be in my own bed. This is going to be great. I was actually kind of excited. Like, this is working out as good as I thought it could have. And then I heard the dreaded words, we're going to the hospital now. So we load up and go over there. I don't think the reality had totally sunken in yet. I was still pretty calm at this point. Well, sort of. I was managing, but the emotions were starting to build up. So we get there, go into surgery. Baby comes out pretty good. Finally, I don't know, about 3-4 o'clock, we get admitted to our room, and we finally have a chance to to debrief for a little bit. The hospital was not where I wanted to be, especially right now. They're kind of like little mini prisons. You're kind of locked in your room, can't see anybody, can't talk to anybody, other than over the phone, of course. But I'm trapped in this little room, thinking this is not where I wanted to be. I'm not even the one who went through everything. I'm just the innocent bystander. And I think I was the one taking it the hardest, because I was still focusing on me. Okay, so we're in the hospital. Okay, maybe a couple days in the hospital, then we'll be good. And not only this starts to creep into my head, not so much the first day, but the next day, so now I got 2 bills to pay for. This was not in the plan. Hospitals don't give out their services for free. So I'm there stressing about that, stressing about making sure everybody's healthy, and I feel utterly powerless to do anything about any of it. Not a good spot for me. So they told us, okay, probably go home 2 days. So I'm all excited Wednesday morning. I'm getting packed up. It's like when they say we can go, like we're going to get out of here and we're going to go home. So I'm taking trips down to the car, and I come back up, and my wife has just got this long look on her face. Oh, great, what happened? Well, the pediatrician came in while I was gone, saw something funny in his eyes, wants to keep us another day. They're worried about seizures. Another loop. This wasn't supposed to happen either. So we stay another day, get some tests run, everything turns out normal. So we finally go home on Thursday. Not feeling rested at all. You don't get very much sleep in the hospital. Now we got a crying baby to deal with, and not a whole lot of chance that I feel like I'm going to get caught up on sleep. Still, again, I'm focused on me. When am I going to get sleep? When am I going to get home? When am I going to get back to my normal life that I like, my planned life? God's still tugging at me. You must not think my character's perfected yet. So he's still working on me. I'm still thinking about how much all this is going to cost. But he's driving me back to the really important things of life. I have a happy and healthy wife and baby. Now they say a lie often told is soon believed. How much more is that for the truth? But I've been keep telling myself this, I am a rich man. We know that God only gives us things that are going to be for our eternal benefit. Amen. He's trying to tell me that all my best laid plans are foolishness. I have something so much better in store. Amen. I don't know what that is yet. I really wish he would tell me. But he is continuing to work on me. Now, thankfully, back to that financial situation, he bestowed upon me good parents that raised me right, and they taught me to plan for things like this. As far as taking care of it, we're going to be okay. The whole reason of having an emergency fund is for emergencies. But for me, having that emergency fund apparently does not take the stress out of it. You see, I like to look at the bank account and see it sitting there. I don't like money to exit that account. But that's the whole idea of having that in the first place, is so when things happen, you don't have to be stressed. So I think part of the reason God's trying to teach me that he's in control. And apparently that's still enough, because some of you may have known the car was totaled last week. So and again, selfishly, I thought, and thankfully, the wife and baby were all right, and everybody was okay. But now I got to find a car, and if you've been looking at any cars lately or anything like that, it's kind of crazy. You do not want to be buying a car right now. But again, God is calling my heart. Do you trust me? Are you going to complain? Are you going to have faith? I still struggle with this every day. It's driven me so much more to prayer than I have been before. And like I said, I came up with this idea for the sermon before any of this stuff happened. I'm trusting that God knows what I need. So let's recap real quick. Remember point number 1 of a godly man, faith. Point number 2, don't murmur, don't complain. Number 3, unselfish. Number 4, accept responsibility. And the last one, God's going to give us challenges, and He's going to give us the strength, and we don't back down from them. And our last verse for the day, Numbers 14:24. Our text for the sermon. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit in him and has followed me fully, I will bring him into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it. Let's be like Caleb. We need a different spirit. It is sorely lacking right now. We need a generation of men who will stand up for the right, be men of faith. I know many of you have heard this famous quote, Signs of the Times, May 4, 1882. The greatest want of this age is the want of men who will not be bought or sold, men who are true and honest in their inmost souls, men who will not fear to call sin by its right name, and to condemn it, in themselves or in others, men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole, men who will stand for the right though the heavens fall. We need these kind of men today. I haven't been perfect. I've been praying a lot. My wife has been there for me. So I want to make a little appeal. If you've been sitting there, this is for the men. If you've been sitting there thinking, I don't know if I've been the man God wants me to be. I think there's things in our life that I need to clean up for my wife, for my kids, for my grandkids. If you're sitting there thinking, I need to make a recommitment to renew my life and to put on true biblical masculinity, I'd like you to stand. Now for the ladies out there, I want you to see these men standing. You have such an important role to play as well. Sometimes we think we can do it all ourselves, but we can't. We need that helpmeet so much. I love it when my wife tells me I'm doing a good job. When she likes what I'm doing, it helps me keep going. So you see these men, hold them accountable, and please support them. We need it. We'll have our closing hymn right now.